Hello, good evening, everybody. It's a warm welcome from Sashikla of Literature for the second episode of NetWit. And today we are going to cover the portions from Geoffrey Chaucer. And before we get into the crux of it, let me start with sharing a simple anecdote. Maybe many of you are familiar with this, but still, I would like to share it here because it has got some kind of relevance with the topic that I'm going to deal with today, maybe the approach. So, this teaching here, it starts in the schools itself, and a teacher, a first standard, a teacher who handles mathematics and for a first standard class, she asks a question. She teaches mathematics, the basics of addition, and she tells that 2 plus 3 is 5. For that, she's a very good teacher, a dedicated teacher, a sincere teacher. She wants each and every student of hers to know this thoroughly. So she starts explaining it with examples, with practical examples. So she teaches 2 plus 3 is 5, 2 in the mind, 3 in the fingers, 3, 4, 5, and that's how the answer becomes 5. She explains everything. And she wants to teach it very practically. So what she does is, she calls the Ayama, gives her rupees 100 and asks her to buy a kg of apples, which has a minimum of 5 apples, maybe a bit smaller in size. So the Ayama goes, brings apples, buys apples and brings it to the class and gives it to the teacher. And the teacher, she wants to test her students because she has taught something great, and she wants all of her students to give the right answer when she asks the question. She wants to test it. So she starts from the first row and she starts asking one by one. She has the apple in store. For the student who is very dull, she has the plan of giving the apple and trying it out. So she asks one by one, 2 plus 3, what's the answer? The child says it's 5. With the very brilliant student, she asks the question as 3 plus 2. The child says, come on, 3 in my mind, 2 in my fingers, or 4 and 5. And the child comes out with the right answer. But there is a child whom she has not assessed much, but she wants that child also to give the right answer because it gives her a sense of a pride that all her students have understood her teaching. So that's the pride a teacher would love to have. So she asked the student, maybe the student's name is Shri. She asks Shri, come on Shri, tell me what is 2 plus 3. And she asks, what's the answer? He thinks for a while and she wants to somehow bring the answer from the student. So she says, imagine I give you 2 apples, right? And your friend Karthik gives you 3 apples. How many apples in all you have? She asks. And the child starts counting, and with no hesitation, the child tells the answer is 6. The teacher is a bit upset because all the students have given the right answer and she was waiting to celebrate the moment where she has taught a wonderful addition to simple addition to all the kids. But one child has failed to give the right answer. She was a bit disappointed. So she keeps asking again and again, and the child is not able to answer. The child gives the same answer, it is 6. The teacher gets very upset. She gets a bit irritated also. So she takes the apples that she has asked the Ayama to buy. She can hands over the apples to the kid, Shri, and gives 3 apples to Karthik and 2 apples to Shri and says, I have given you 2 apples. You have 2 on the table. Karthik, you give the 3 apples to Shri, and Karthik gives 3 apples to Shri. And now she asks, come on, how many apples do you have? So what Shri does is, he says, you have given me 2 apples, 1, 2, and Karthik has given me 3 apples, 2 plus 3, 3, 4, 5. And my mom has given me another apple for snacks, and that is 1, 6. That's why I told the answer is 6. The teacher is dumbstruck. She's not able to open her mouth. She's not able to utter a single word because as per the calculations of the child, the answer is 6. How many apples do you have? So the answer is 6, right? So when you start thinking like this, you have preconceived notions in your mind. You expect some kind of answer. You correlate some certain things with certain things, and you feel that this is right, and you think that this alone could be right, right? For example, why I wanted to narrate this anecdote before starting this session is that when you think of Chaucer, immediately you're reminded of the Canterbury Tales. And if you find that the Canterbury Tales there, automatically your mind feels that the Canterbury Tales is the right answer. It is because it's a famous work, it's his masterpiece. You have a feeling that it is, maybe there are so many works written by Chaucer, but anybody would know that the Canterbury Tales is important work. So we naturally expect a question from an important work. So when it comes to net exams, at times your preconceived notions may make you fail, may deceive you, may mislead you. So do not be carried by preconceived notions. Right? Look into the question, read the question again and again to understand what the question is all about. Look into the choice clearly. Don't get carried away with your preconceived notion. Chaucer, Canterbury Tales. Milton, Paradise Lost. Don't go like that, because we are very familiar with certain works. Certain works we have not at all heard of. So read the question, and the question itself might give you the clues at times. So with a question, you may be able to produce 10 or 15 questions at times. Such is the pattern of the net questions. So going into the session of NetWit now, we'll go into the first question. Identify the work of Chaucer which does not belong to the Italian period. Which does not belong to the Italian period. So you're given some words. To answer this question, you ought to know which are the works that belong to the Italian period, or are there any other periods too where Chaucer's works will be categorized. You have got so many things to think about. So here the options are the House of Fame, the Book of the Duchess, the Parlement of Foules, Treilus and Criseyde. Since many of you would have started with your preparation with Chaucer right from the scratch, you want to do it in a very clear-cut way. I think many of you would have found the answer. It is the Book of the Duchess. Here, you have to have a clear idea about the French period works of Chaucer, the Italian period, and the English period. So my next slide would explain that. The French period belongs the Romance of the Rose, translation, the Book of the Duchess, the Complaint of Fight, and ABC. To the Italian period, the House of Fame. So this is the question asked, which does not belong to the Italian period. That's why the Book of the Duchess is the right answer, because all the other three belong to the Italian period. The House of Fame, the Parlement of Foules, Treilus and Criseyde, the Legend of Good Women, and Translation of Consolation of Philosophy belongs to the Italian period. And the major work that belongs to the English period is the Canterbury Tales. And with this, you can also know some minor or major details about Chaucer, so that you may be able to answer all the questions about him, about what are the titles he has got, or what are the positions he has held, or what his family background is, something like that. You can do some sort of groundwork. I give you certain points here. In 1386, Chaucer was elected as a member of Parliament for Kent. In 1386, Chaucer was elected as a member of Parliament for Kent. And his father and grandfather had been vintners, winemakers, right? And all names do have a meaning. And this name, Chaucer, it comes from a French origin, chausier, which means shoemaker. Chausier, which means shoemaker. Chaucer is, as you all should have known this, Chaucer is known as the father of English literature. He's also known as a father of English poetry. And he's known as the morning star of Renaissance. It is because he preceded Renaissance and exemplified similar characteristics like humanism, which was the chief characteristic of during the period of Renaissance. So maybe the beginning of it. So he was called the morning star of Renaissance. And he was the first poet to make use of the heroic couplet. and he's also called the father of English language, the first national poet, and the best thing to remember about him is there were so many poets who were buried in Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey, but it was Chaucer who was the first writer to be buried in Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. Right? So moving on to the second question. Name the war. We know we would have covered all the aspects of Chaucer relating to his works, but the history also plays a major role here. Right? When it comes to English literature, or history of English literature plays a major role. Name the war in which Chaucer took part and was arrested, and name the king who paid for his release. You should have known that Chaucer lived during the reigns of 3 kings. Find it out who those 3 kings are, right? And this question it talks about he has taken part in a war, he was arrested, and the ransom amount to release him was paid by a king, right? So you have here the Castilian Civil War by Richard II, War of Henry IV, 100 Years' War, Edward III, Battle of Zava, Henry VI. And the answer is Chaucer took part in 100 Years' War, and it was Edward III, the king, who paid the ransom amount and released him. He paid for it. He paid for releasing Chaucer from jail. So why is it called the 100 Years' War? How many years did it exactly take place? Was it 100 years? No, it is not. It is not so. It isn't 100 years. It is 116 years. These are some of the facts I want to talk about. It took place for 116 years, from 1337 to 1453. From 1337 to 1453, it took place for 116 years, but rounding it off, people called it 100 Years' War. And who fought these wars? Right? Which are the major countries? For what did they fight? It was a series of conflicts fought between England and France over the succession to the French throne. Who is going to occupy the throne? French throne. For this, England and France, they fought with each other. And this 100 Years' War can be divided into 3 phases. Right? The Edwardian War, where it was due to Edward III's ambition. It took place from 1337 to 1360. And the next is the Caroline War. It took place from 1369 to 1389. Charles V of France dominated. And the Lancastrian War from 1415 to 1453. Henry V of England dominated that. So this being an aspect, maybe the Edwardian War, the Caroline War, the Lancastrian War, these may be some of the questions from history that you need to focus on. Get into the detail of it. Who fought? Who won? All those details. And there are major events during the 100 Years' War. There were so many battles fought. So many battles fought. So you may have to go into the minute details of it. Right? Battle of Criseyde, Battle of Poitiers, Treaty of Bretigny, Death of Black Prince, Battle of Agincourt, Treaty of Troyes, Siege of Orleans, and Rise of Joan of Arc, Battle of Castellon. So these are some of the wars. I think I can repeat it once more. Battle of Criseyde was fought in 1346. Battle of Poitiers, it was fought in 1356. Treaty of Bretigny was signed in 1360. These are some of the major events, not the wars. Major events that took place during the period of the 100 Years' War. Treaty of Bretigny was signed in 1360. Death of Black Prince in 1376. Battle of Agincourt in 1415. Treaty of Troyes was signed in 1420. Siege of Orleans and Rise of Joan of Arc in 1429. And Battle of Castellon in 1453. Right? So let's move on to the third question. The Book of the Duchess, also known as The Death of Blanche, was written by Chaucer to commemorate the death of Blanche of Lancaster. Blanche of Lancaster is not any one of the following identified. If you're asked the question as who is Blanche, you might know the answer. It's very simple, right? That's a direct question. So here, Blanche, she has so many positions in history that the question goes like, Blanche of Lancaster is not any one of the following. Identify that. First wife of Chaucer, daughter of the first Duke of Lancaster, mother of King Henry IV, grandmother of King Henry V. The right answer is, that is actually the wrong answer because it is not associated with her. Don't register it in your mind, but you'll have to be able to pick it out. She was not the first wife of Chaucer, right? She was not the first wife of Chaucer. So here you can add an extra fact that she was the first wife of John of Gaunt, right? And she is a person who has been closely associated with Chaucer's wife. And this work, the Book of the Duchess, is the first major work of Geoffrey Chaucer. First major work, right? So if this is going to be a question you should be able to answer. The Book of the Duchess is the first major work of Chaucer, and the first wife of Chaucer is not Blanche, but it is Philippa Royat, right? Philippa Royat, who was connected with Blanche. In what way? She was lady in waiting of the queen and sister of John of Gaunt's wife. John of Gaunt is the patron of Chaucer and a close friend, right? So John of Gaunt being the patron and a close friend, his wife's sister was Philippa Royat, whom Chaucer has married, right? So John of Gaunt is in a way related to Chaucer, and Chaucer has mainly opted to write in Middle English, and this book, the Book of the Duchess, it tells the story of Ceyx and Alcyone, right? So just make a note of it. Ceyx. I don't know how I pronounce it. I pronounce it as Ceyx, or you pronounce it as Ceyx. Ceyx and Alcyone. Alcyone. So you can go into the story part of it in detail when you have time. So let's move on to the fourth question now. Name the 18th century poem by Alexander Pope that was directly inspired by Geoffrey Chaucer's 14th century poem, The House of Fame. Just imagine a 14th century poem after 4 centuries, right? After the 18th century, Alexander Pope was influenced by the work called The House of Fame of Chaucer, and that has inspired him to write a poem, right? What are the poems? All the 4 poems that I have mentioned here are poems of Alexander Pope, so you can have an idea that these poems, who is the poet who has written all these poems? Maybe it is Alexander Pope. You can put it in your memory. The Temple of Fame, A Vision, The Rape of the Lock, The Dancier, Pastorals. And the answer is The Temple of Fame, A Vision. It was a direct inspiration from the House of Fame of Chaucer. So I would like to tell some facts about, because we're not focusing on Pope now, we are focusing on Chaucer. I would like to add a few points about the House of Fame here. It is 2005 lines long, and it is in 3 books, not a single volume. It's in 3 books. It's taken the form of a dream vision. It is composed in octosyllabic couplets, and the literary genre is dream vision. You have to know what dream vision is. A dream vision is where a narrator opens by relating some problem in his mind. He's experiencing some kind of a problem, and with that problem in his mind, he falls asleep, right? And he has a dream. He has a dream which suggests clearly, reveals a solution to the problem. This is what we call as a dream vision. You are going to bed with a problem and you get a dream, and that dream clears your mind, clears all kinds of confusion, and gives you a solid solution, or it makes you reconcile to the situation that you are in. Maybe you have been complaining about a situation. That situation you are able to reconcile with. Yes, this is how it is going to be. I need to accept that. So either it is going to give you a solution, or it is going to reconcile, pacify you to accept the situation. This is what you call as the genre of dream vision. And this book, The House of Fame, it belongs to this. And the story is all about Aeneas' betrayal of Dido. Aeneas, Aeneas. Aeneas' betrayal of Dido, Dido. So just I've given you an outline that the story is about this. If you are going to serve, if you are interested, you can go further into it because there might be a question going into the story of it also. So this is just I've given you an idea as to how to proceed with things. So you can focus on the story. So we'll move on to the next question. Name the poem composed by Chaucer, which is a dream vision that begins with the god of love chastising Chaucer for writing about women's betrayal of men. Women's betrayal of men. Chaucer always had the habit of complaining women that women had been always betraying men. So Chaucer wanted to write something different. Maybe that was the attempt made, and this book was a result of that. The Legend of Good Women, The House of Fame, Treilus and Criseyde, The Parlement of Foules. So here, if you have understood the question properly, the title itself gives you the clue. I think you should have found the answer right now. The answer is The Legend of Good Women. Right? So this Legend of Good Women is a completely different book by Chaucer because here he appreciates women as good. Generally, he condemns them. He says that women betray men. Right? So Chaucer, maybe he was a male chauvinist himself. I'm sorry, this is personally my opinion. Right? I'm not stating it as a fact. After having read all these facts, I thought maybe he should have been he could have been, I shouldn't say he should have been, he could have been a male chauvinist. He actually planned to write 20 tales about good women. 20 tales about good women, but maybe there weren't 20 good women he could write stories about. He finished 8 and left the 9th incomplete. Maybe he was not able to complete it because he didn't get the story part of it, or he was forced to write something like that, so he didn't get the flow of it. And he presents 9 different legends and myths of women who are hurt by men. You understand? Earlier, all his works were talking about women betraying men. Here, men betray women. So here you have 3 characters, right? Cleopatra, Thisbe, Dido, Hypsipyle, Lucrece, Ariadne, Philomela, Phyllis, Hyperministra, and so on. So you can, I have pulled up all the 9 legendary women characters together. You can have it like Ariadne, Cleopatra, Hypsipyle, and so on. So you can arrange it like A, C, D. Ariadne, Cleopatra, and Dido, right? That forms a thing, and then PPT, Philomela, Phyllis, Thisbe. It's easy for you to remember. And HLH or HHL, where the other 3 characters they form a group. And one of the first, Chaucer's this work was one of the first works to use iambic pentameter. And the theme here is fidelity of women in love, the loyalty that women had for men. They were true in their love. That is what is mentioned here in all the stories, all the 8 stories and the 9th incomplete story also. And this can be taken as a palinode. Do you know what palinode is? Palinode is actually a kind of a sentiment which is expressed to retract actually what you have written. For example, Chaucer's Treilus and Criseyde was talking bad about women, right? So in order to compensate that, exactly the opposite, he wrote this work as a palinode, which is a poem in which Chaucer retracts a view or sentiment expressed in Treilus and Criseyde, where women were portrayed as bad. Now he portrays women as good. That is what you call as the palinode. You write something earlier and everybody is using it now. Philomela, Phyllis, and this way, right? And the last one is HLH or HHL. Easy to remember. So if you're going to go like that, you need not remember 9 names. If you're going to remember, read all the 9 names, you're going to have only these alphabet in your mind. And that is going to help you a lot. This is how you correlate things and study. This is not the exact way of studying literature, but since you have to remember so much here, I'm just giving you this as a cue. Right? I'm a bit dunce, I'm a bit dull with it. So I adopt such methods to remember certain things. Maybe it's idiotic. You can frame your own intelligent ways of using such techniques, right? And this was one of the first works which used iambic pentameter, and you'll have to look into the fact of what iambic pentameter is. I'll be dealing with it when I deal with literary terms. If that is going to be one of my sessions, I'll be dealing with that. And the theme of this poem is fidelity of women in love, how women were loyal when they are in love, and especially when in love, earlier that was not the picture that Chaucer has given about women. Women generally betray. That was the picture he had given, but this work is so special because it's a kind of a retraction, a kind of a total contradiction from all his works. So this might be an important work that way. And this work is a palinode. A palinode is a work which is written to retract a view that you have expressed in your former work. Maybe Treilus and Criseyde, he had pulled down the image of women that Chaucer himself wanted to write something in praise of women. So that is what we call as a palinode. And he has done that because he had portrayed a woman as bad in Treilus and Criseyde. He wanted to undo that, or he himself regretted it, and he wanted to, maybe he had great opposition from women or from his wife. No idea, right? So maybe he wanted to change that, and he wrote a poem, and that poem is The Legend of Good Women, which is a palinode to Treilus and Criseyde. So let's move on to the next question. A very simple question that you all know. You should have guessed the answer right now. Name Chaucer's magnum opus. Magnum opus is a masterpiece which was based on Boccaccio's Decameron, that entitled Chaucer to be the father of English poetry. This is the fact that you have to remember. We know that his masterpiece is this, but here you have to know that the source for that is Boccaccio's Decameron, and the reason why Chaucer was called the father of English poetry is only because of this work. And it goes without saying, the Canterbury Tales. Treilus and Criseyde, the options are Treilus and Criseyde, the Canterbury Tales, The Legend of Good Women, the Parlement of Foules. The answer is the Canterbury Tales. If you want to talk about the Canterbury Tales, you can talk for a whole day. That is why people get lost with the preparation of net or set. They start with Chaucer, they sit with Canterbury Tales, they sit with Canterbury Tales, and they sit with Canterbury Tales. It goes on like that because it's such a big thing with so many facts to cover, with so many tales. So the main aspects of it, I have given a clue. You maybe with this you can develop more, and you can keep on adding to your notes, right? The first one is, the point I would like to discuss here is, how many pilgrims are there? All of us are confused. All of us, some people say it is 31, some say it is 30. Some say it is 29, some say it is 28. What is the right answer? The right answer is 29. But when you find the characters, you find them as 31. You find the characters as 31, but all the 31 are not pilgrims. The host and the cook are not to be taken into account. The host and the cook are not to be taken into account. So 29 pilgrims, they meet at Tabat Inn at Southwark. 29 pilgrims, they meet at Tabat Inn, Southwark, and these pilgrims, they have a purpose. They are going to the shrine of St. Thomas at Canterbury to worship the relics of Thomas Becket. This has got its own history. So you'll have to know something more about Thomas Becket here. And it is, Canterbury Tales is a collection of stories told by the pilgrims. Actually, Chaucer planned to write 120 tales. Thank God he didn't write that many, because even covering just the 24 tales that were written is so difficult for literature students. Imagine if he had written all the 120 tales. Maybe that would have been a history of Chaucer as a separate subject, as a separate genre itself. Maybe, I do not know. He planned to write 120 tales, right? So he actually had plans like that, but only 24 tales were written. Only 24 tales were written, and of those 24 tales, only 22 tales were written in verse. 22 tales were written in verse, and 2 tales were written in prose. So we did not focus much we did not take efforts to remember the 22 tales that were written in verse. Instead, we can focus on the 2 tales that were written in prose. One is the Parson's Tale, and the other is the Tale of Melody. The Tale of Melody was narrated by Chaucer. So that's a bit significant. It's a tale in prose narrated by Chaucer, and the Parson's Tale is automatically, as you know, it's self-explanatory. The parson is the narrator. Right, so 2 tales are written in prose. So this was the case, and the first tale and the last tale, they may be significant. Right, they may not ask what's the 7th tale, what is the 9th tale. If you are going to have a very inquisitive questioner who wants to tax you much, maybe he'll ask you who told the 10th tale. Right, but it's always better to remember the first tale and the last tale. The first tale is the tale of the Knight's Tale. And the last tale is the Parson's Tale. And the setting is April, it is spring season. It's mentioned there in the Canterbury Tales itself. And I've given you a list of characters of the pilgrims, a knight, squire, parson, it goes on, right? The characters. And you may have an option, a question like ecclesiastical characters in the prologue, like the question may be 4 choices may be given, and find out the character who isn't an ecclesiastical character here. You may have such a chance, right? So 8 ecclesiastical characters are here who are related to religion, who are related to church. They are the nun, monk, pardoner, parson, prioress, prior, summoner, Oxford clerk. Right? So these people are the ecclesiastical characters, and 3 pilgrims, they belong to the military profession. They are known for their courage. They are the knight, squire, and the yeoman. 3 to the military profession, and 3 women characters are there in the prologue. They are wife of Bath, prioress, and nun. And there is a homosexual couple, summoner and the pardoner. They are homosexuals, right? So this way you can collect as many facts as possible from Canterbury Tales. So now let's move on to the 7th question. It's a simple question. At times, you know, you will be ready for a match, or maybe between India and Pakistan. You will put all your work, hard work, and you'll go for the match. Imagine you're one amidst the cricket team. You think that it's going to be a war. You're going to do this. You're going to do that, and you prepare everything, and you go, and then you find that Pakistan gets all out for 50 runs. It's so simple. At times it happens, and when India thinks that it's just 50, India goes all out for 48 runs. It happens in cricket. So is here. You expect so many difficult questions. You have covered almost all the aspects, and you get a question like this. Name the pilgrim in Canterbury Tales who had a forked beard. If this is going to be the question, you ought to know the description too. So the merchant, the friar, the monk, the squire. 4 options. And the right answer is the merchant who had a forked beard, right? So Chaucer actually, he followed a technique called physiognomy. Generally, they tell that your physical features have a kind of a relationship with your character, with your nature, with what you're going to get, and so on. For example, in Tamil Nadu and all, when you have a dimple here, they say that you are very rich, you are very lucky, right? So similarly, physiognomy is something which represents a person's facial features or expression, especially when regarded as indicative of character. Right? It talks about you. It tells something about you. Another thing you can tell is when a man has a bald head, a big forehead, he's believed to be intelligent. I think you all know this. It's something common, right? Something like that. So here you have some characters like Prioress, Madam Eglantine, glass grey eyes. It's something which depicts that she is a deceptive woman, not reliable. It's deceptive. And the wife of Bath is described as a large woman with lovers' gap teeth. When your teeth, they are not put together. Actually, women generally after their delivery, after having a tight grip of their teeth during delivery, they develop, their gums become weak and they develop a kind of a gap. That's what I believe in, right? But here it is believed that women with such gap between teeth, they are considered to be immoral, right? So this is another physiognomy. A lustful or passionate person. If such a person, if a person with a gapped teeth is seen, immediately don't conclude, but that's what is mentioned here as physiognomy, right? And the partner's glaring eyes and limp hair, it is illustrative of his fraudulence, forgery, a person who could cheat very easily. Glaring eyes, it isn't, it's a glaring, it's got a kind of a watery content inside, and it's you're not able to see into his eyes clearly. Maybe that person is a fraudulent, that is what is mentioned here. So moving on to the next question. Identify Chaucer's largest single poem which he dedicated to John Gower and is the source of the saying, all good things must come to an end. All good things must come to an end. That is the source of the saying, the core of the poem that he's written, and he has dedicated it to John Gower. So John Gower is a famous writer, and a writer dedicating a work to a writer is definitely going to be an important work. And the options here are Treilus and Criseyde, the Canterbury Tales, the Romance of the Rose, the Book of the Duchess. So of this, Treilus and Criseyde is a work that Chaucer dedicated to Gower. So about this book, it is Treilus and Criseyde is set against the backdrop of war during the siege of Troy. It is called as the first modern novel, and the source is Boccaccio's The Second Philostrato. It's influenced works. It has influenced so many works. Robert Henderson's Scott poem, The Testament of Criseyde, is an inspiration, has taken its source from Treilus and Criseyde, and the literary legend William Shakespeare, he has written a drama, Treilus and Criseyde, and that has also taken its source from Chaucer's The Treilus and Criseyde. And this is the second longest work of Chaucer. So, to the next question. Name Chaucer's poem, which is in the form of a dream vision in Rhyme Royal stanza and contains one of the earliest references to the idea that St. Valentine's Day is a special day for lovers. Valentine's Day, right in the 14th century, Chaucer has written about it. Right from that day, it's being celebrated. So, which is the work? Parlement of Foules, Treilus and Criseyde, the Canterbury Tales, the Legend of Good Women. It is the Parlement of Foules. It is actually an allegory. You have to look into what allegory is. This will be dealt with when I deal with literary terms. An allegory and the betrothal of King Richard II to Anne of Bohemia. Right? So it's based on that, and it is based on the myth that each year, on each year, on Valentine's Day, birds gather together to choose their mates. Right? So that's what is being practiced by human beings now. Right? We choose our mates and then celebrate our Valentine's Day. But birds, on the Valentine's Day, they join together, they choose their mates. That was the myth that was believed then. And it gently satirizes the tradition of courtly love. So it is a satire as to how people say that they fall in love, that they are really in love, but actually it is the other way around. And the poem begins with the narrator reading Cicero's The Dream of Scipio in the hope of learning some certain thing. So, how does the poem begin? That may be a question. It begins with the narrator reading Cicero's The Dream of Scipio, Scipio, and it follows the rhyme royal pattern, a rhyming stanza form that was introduced to English poetry by Geoffrey Chaucer. It consists of 7 lines, usually in iambic pentameter. The rhyme scheme is AB, AB, BCC, right? So all these will be dealt in detail when we deal with literary terms. And to the final question now, name the character in Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales who is from Bath on the Avon River. We all know the famous character, the wife of Bath, but we might not have known her name. So it's important to know the names of some of the characters that are mentioned in the Canterbury Tales, right? So Robin, Harry Bailey, Alison, Roger of Ware. So here, if you have known it is wife of Bath, it is easy for you to find out. There's only one female name here. It's Alison. Otherwise, you will be confusing yourself with all the four characters, right? So Roger of Ware is easy to remember. Cooking ware, utensils. So he is a cook. You can remember him that way, right? So what do you know about Alison? What do you know about wife of Bath? So you'll have to know something about all the characters, right? So wife of Bath was married 5 times and she was widowed 5 times. What a woman she should have been. What a woman she should have been that all her 5 husbands died. And she is good at cloth making. She is deaf. She cannot hear properly. And you know the reason behind? It was because she was slapped by her husband Jenkins. That was the reason she was not born deaf. She was made deaf by one of her bold husbands, Jenkins. And according to her, women desire sovereignty over their husband. She wants freedom. And that is why all the 5 husbands died, maybe, giving her real liberty that she wanted. And she wears scarlet stockings, which is a sign of wealth. Right? She wanted to show herself as a wealthy woman. And the 4th husband died when she was on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. That might be a question too. When she was on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, her 4th husband died. And she knew the remedies for love's mischances. When something goes wrong with love, she knew what should be done. And she knew how she should recover from that. And I would like to mention some of the names. The miller is given the name Robin. The host is given the name Harry Bailey. The cook is given the name Roger of Ware. And the friar is given the name Hubert. And the prioress is given the name Madame Eglantine. So similarly, find out all the names of characters so that in case you have a question, in case it's not necessary for you to memorize. Read it thrice. Automatically, it will be there in your passive memory. Once net was in a pattern where you will have to write down the answers. Now it is just ticking the option. If you're going to have it in your passive memory, as soon as you see the answer, you're going to get it back in your memory and you're going to just choose the right answer. So read it as many times as possible, and the best thing to do is recollect. Recollect it often. I read Chaucer when I started preparing for net in my BA, and I'm thorough with it. Don't be like that. Keep revision. Keep revising it often so that you remember all the names as you speak, as you talk, as you see certain things. Right? If you're going to see a woman with a gapped tooth, right, or immediately you can associate her with a wife of Bath and say that maybe this woman is immoral. You can associate. I don't want you to brand them so. I'm just asking you to correlate and associate so that you can remember facts. Right? So that is all for NetWit. And next we are going on to the next session called as the Quick Wit. Before we go to the Quick Wit this week, we are planning a different method. I don't know how far it is going to be effective, but it's just an experiment, right? So in case it is going to be a success, we are going to have a great time. In case it is going to be a failure, please kindly bear with us. Through trial and error, we learn. Okay? So if you are using your mobile, you can go to www.menti.com. www.menti.com. Please go to www.menti.com. If you have reached there, it would ask you for a code. type your name first, and it would ask you for a code. The code number is 86280856. 86280856. I repeat, the code number is 86280856. I'll tell you the rules quickly. Answer the question as soon as the question is asked. The person with the fastest and correct answer will top the leaderboard after each question. The person with the fastest and correct answer will top the leaderboard after each question. The winner will be decided based on the correct and fastest answers, and the winner will be declared towards the end of the quick quiz session. You need not wait till tomorrow. The leaderboard topper will be known, the literal topper will be known today itself, but the winner will be honored in Literal's Telegram group the next day, tomorrow. So you make sure to join our Telegram group using the link given in the chat box, right? So let me share my screen now. I'll repeat the code again for people who want to join. Use the code. Go to www.menti.com. The code is 86280856. The first question. Answer fast to get more points. Name the oldest work in English written upon an elaborate scientific instrument. Who told the tale of 2 months in the Canterbury Tales? Which are the months? So no one has given the right answer. Let's move on to the next question. Question 3. Who speaks of Chaucer thus? Necessity to all high imagination that it should point straight from life. It is Anushya now who has given the fastest and the correct answer and tops the leaderboard too. Who among the Chaucerians wrote a sequel to Treilus and Criseyde? So we have a tough competition here. People are joining. Happy to see you all here. Thank you. And we move on to the last question, I believe. Yeah. Which Canterbury pilgrim carries a brooch inscribed with the Latin words meaning love conquers all? Which Canterbury pilgrim carries a brooch inscribed with the Latin words meaning love conquers all? Wow, that's fantastic. People have made it thorough with Canterbury Tales, I believe. And the literal topper is, yes, Anushya. Congratulations. Congratulations, Anushya. So I think you would have enjoyed your quick wit. Kindly share your opinions about this program in the chat box, and I'll be happy to have your suggestions too as to what are the topics to be dealt. We can cover one by one. We'll see to it that almost all the points are covered, and literal provides you mini courses every Saturday at 6 p.m. It includes a 90-minute lecture along with the PDF material. Our literary tutors have taken efforts for days to explore a particular topic in literature and provide you the crux of it in a nutshell. The mini course of this week is on Cultural Studies, Raymond Williams and English Culture by Mr. Karthik, the secretary and co-founder of Litreal. You can find the details about the course in the description box. If you are interested, please do fill in the Google form. Thank you for joining me this evening. Take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye. Good night.